Thank you for your time today. My name is Michael Collins, and my TEDx talk story for you today is on time and participation. And while we value that, none of us feel like we have enough time. We all don't have enough time. There's never enough time. You don't know how much time you have. My father, who is the greatest man I ever met, he used to say that participation is the way to change the world. Cooperation is the problem. But you don't have time to cooperate and participate. Let's take a look at contemporary culture first. Do you all know how many hours there are in a week? 168 hours in a week. That's so many hours in a week. But we still don't feel like we have enough time to get all the things done that we want to. In the early 1900s, in America, workers, businesses, and the government got together and decided a 40-hour work week was both reasonable and responsible for families to have and grow. You had 40 hours that you worked or went to school, 60 you rested, and 40 hours you had with your family, and Sunday you had off because of your faith. Time has changed exponentially now. We have devices that help us save time and entertain us. In a 24-hour work week in contemporary America, we have this basic schedule here. How many hours a day do you think the average American is on social media, TV, computers, or their phone? How many do you think?
I'm going to say 7.
I know you all have your own answers. And she's probably closer, but I'm going to use a number that I think you all agree is more than if you used 4. You have 24 hours in a day. So 8 hours you sleep, 8 hours you go to work, food prep, transportation, hygiene, and that, if 4 hours, leaves no time in the day to live. And that's where I found myself. I was working so hard. I was coming home and I was watching television, and then I was sleeping. Work, sleep, television. Work, sleep, television. And that just was not a lifestyle or a life. And I found a sense of community in my very first career. I was a lighting designer with theater companies, and I toured all over the country, and I decided that participation is the way, and I needed to figure out how to use my time differently. And I did, and I'll show you how. This is me with hair on my very first tour. And I really enjoyed what I did for a living, but I didn't necessarily enjoy living there. It seemed like the tours I was on always seemed to go to the north in the winter and the south in the summer. Very unreasonable, by the way, if you're somebody like me. But that was the routine. And one day we were in Chicago, and I'm freezing, and the next place is Idaho, and I'm sitting in the shower complaining to myself, whining about all the stuff, and I'm so tired. And I walk out of the bathroom, and my girlfriend, who was smarter than me, just looking right at me, and she said, "Why are you whining? Would you rather enjoy what you do for a living, or would you rather enjoy living?" And I said, "Well, obviously, I'd rather enjoy living." She goes, "Michael, there's only 3 things you need to be happy. You have to love who you're with, where you live, and what you do for a living." I said, "That seems very reasonable." And she stood there for a minute looking at me, and she goes, "Then what are you doing in Idaho?" And she was right. 2 weeks later, my tour ended, and I came down here to Brevard, North Carolina, and to take a little time off. And I was staying at this little cabin here in Transylvania County, and every morning there's a little creek in front of it. And I'm trying to decide what to do, and I'm coming out here, and every morning I'm like, wow, this is a beautiful place to live. Wow, this really is a beautiful place to live. Next day, wow, I really could live here. And so I said, hey, I could live here. So I decided, well, check, that's one of them. Now I got to figure out what to do for a living. So I moved all of my stuff down here to North Carolina, and in my living room, and I'm sitting in my living room trying to decide, how to make a living, and I wish I could work out of my living room like everyone does. Back then, people didn't do that as much. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out what to do for a living in my living room. And so I went back to Brevard College, right here at this institution, and I decided to pursue a business degree. And I ended up managing, operating, and then owning my own coffee shop called The Essence of Thyme. And what I did was I took everything in my living room and I put it in the coffee shop, and I opened Brevard's living room. I loved it. So much fun I had. I'll tell you what, I was there for 11 years. We did music 5 nights a week, 1 day a week. We helped start the street dances that are downtown. And in that time, I met one of my local heroes on the radio, on public radio, named Wanda Lou Green. And I was talking to her saying, oh, I'd really love to get on the radio sometime. She goes, Michael, you don't want to be a DJ. You want to be the so-and-so guy. They stay forever, but DJs rotate. So I went to my local radio station, which is White Squirrel Radio, WSQL, and I asked them, are you interested in, having another show? I've got a jazz show in mind, and they said yes. And I've been having a jazz show now for 16 years. I loved it. It's called Jazzylvania. All because it's only 2 hours a week. And I thought, okay, that's a reasonable amount of time. I can deal with that. One day I was at my coffee shop sweeping, and this other local hero walked in, a little Quaker woman, about this tall, named Dorothy Mock, about 80-something years old. And she came up, and she had all these dresses that she always made her own dresses. They were purple. And she comes up to me with her husband. And she said, Michael, my husband and I would like to know if you're interested in mediation. Mediation, I said, I don't know. And she goes, no. It's proactive peacemaking. You could be we see you as a proactive peacemaker. You could be more of one. We see you as a bridge builder. Would you be interested in taking these courses at the Center for Dialogue down the road? It's only a couple $100. $200, I said. I don't have any money. I'm working 80 hours a week. I don't have much time. She said, look, it's just a couple of hours. Please. And if you don't want to be a mediator, you don't have to do it. But please, my husband and I would like to sponsor you if you want to do it. So I said, okay. So I went and I met this other local hero by the name of John Fenner, who teaches mediation skills. And what the Mediation Center does is they take anger and power out of a conversation so that you can resolve your conflicts. And they give you the skills to have a conversation with somebody without power and anger being in it. And I thought, wow, this is transformational mediation. I actually felt like I was a little bit of a peacemaker in the county, and it was only 2 hours a month or so, and I figured, okay, I can put my time into that. And that was fantastic. It was just, we need to teach that everywhere. And this woman named Robin Funkston came around, and she said, Michael, we're going to start teaching this in the school system. I went, wow, every school should teach this. She says, yes, if you want to come with me, let's go in it. And let me tell you, you teach kids how to resolve their own conflicts. Those kids were so enjoyed that they would try to resolve other conflicts using those tools. I was very impressed and proud of what I was doing, and I loved that. Proactive transformational mediation. Well, in 1999, I met this woman named Pam Brown, again, another local hero to me, and she ran the Bread of Life soup kitchen. And I asked her if I could volunteer, and she said, it's only 2 hours a week. Okay. So I started working and volunteering at the soup kitchen for a few years, and then eventually she said, why don't you come in on Sunday night and prepare the next day's meal? I said, okay. I brought my own people from the coffee shop or from the community that I felt maybe needed to know about the Bread of Life or needed, to maybe support them or something. It was fantastic. Then one day I was working at the soup kitchen, I was volunteering at the Mediation Center, and I'm working at the coffee shop, and you can overdo it. You just get too much. I was overwhelmed, and I was drinking way too much coffee. And I fell asleep one night, and I had this dream. Now, I'm not much of a religious person, but I'm telling you that I was on the top of Mount Pisgah, and it was just raining, and I was angry, and I was yelling at God. And I stood up there and I started yelling at God, and he started making it rain. It rains in Transylvania all the time. And he started raining, and I started yelling at him, why? Why do you have so much suffering in the world? There are people who are sick. There are people who are really having a hard time suffering down here financially, personally, a lot of mental illness. What are you doing about it? And then just as a major thunderstorm started up, and like they do in the movies, the clouds kind of formed, and this bright light came down, and this voice from heaven came down booming, which, by the way, sounded a lot like my dad. And he said, "Why do you think I put you there?" Why did he put me there? I thought, oh, he sounded like my dad. What, you don't have time? I have the essence of time. What are you talking about? What do you think your purpose is? Your purpose is not complete. Emulate your heroes. And it started to fade. And as it started to fade, he started to list heroes. And I started to think it was going to be like Jesus and MLK and Buddha and all these other people. But it wasn't. It was just local community members that I was really fond of. And I thought, wow, that's kind of neat. But I'm not a doctor. How can I help? As providence would happen, 2 weeks later, a group of ladies in this county wanted to form a free medical clinic. So they went to the public library and got a book off the shelf that says How to Open a Free Clinic by Patch Adams. Robin Williams played him in the movie. And in the back of this book, there's a place in South Carolina that has done this. So they drove down there. They were very impressed, but as church ladies do, they were driving back like, oh, we could do better than that. And they did. That's when I learned communities can solve social problems. They got people to put it together, and I started noticing that all the nonprofits in Transylvania and most of the country were started by women who raised their hand and said, "Excuse me, we have a social problem," and got other people to join them and solve those problems. I loved that. We can solve our own problems. The free medical clinic started and it opened, and I wanted to know how to help. Well, I'm not a doctor, but they said, then we need intake. I said, what's intake? They said, well, we need somebody to volunteer 1 or 2 hours a week or month, to put these the files together and to get them ready for the doctor. I said, sure. There's only 32,500 people in this county, and in the few years that I was volunteering at the soup kitchen, I almost saw 2,000 people come through that place. I met all those people as they came in and put them on the computers and got them ready with a lot of other volunteers. That was incredible. And I thought, that's the way to change the world. That's participation. The soup kitchen had no money. So how do you get money? Well, participation. I got 24 churches to come in once a month, 5 youth groups once a month. The after-school programs would come in, all for 2 to 3 hours a week or 2 to 3 hours a month. And I realized if you could solve hunger by only working 2 or 3 hours a month, is it worth it? Well, if hunger is an issue, yeah, it's worth it. So we tried to build it all up. And while I was at the Bread of Life, there were a lot of homeless people. We had no shelter in our county. And it was real obvious, and I was driving them all the way to Hendersonville, the next county over, who did have one. In fact, so many people from this county went over there that they had a Transylvania map on the wall right next to the Henderson County map. Well, I tried to put a group together that formed like a Room at the Inn program. It's a national program, and I failed. I didn't know what to do. But my board members got together, and they decided that they would take the last 5 places in our parking lot and open the Haven. And they put it together as a community event. And let me tell you, a local hero who was the mayor practically gave us enough money for the foundation and the cement. Lowe's Hardware gave us the shingles, and Jennings Hardware gave us the cabinets. There's a summer camp down the road that gave us all the bunk beds. And those church ladies made us quilts for all the beds. Again, cooperation. What a community event. All these people came together and solved that problem in this community, or helped to. In fact, that's what the word community means. Community. You come together and you solve these problems. That is the way to change the world. I was very impressed. I love this community. Do you know that Transylvania County is one of 100 counties in North Carolina exactly? But Transylvania County is the #1 county per capita in volunteering in the state of North Carolina. And North Carolina is 3rd in the nation. It's cultural. Starts off with all the people who are here and start things, and when people move here, which I certainly understand why they would, they come and make all these places better. We can make a difference. My other local hero named Ernie Mills, who was a teacher of mine at the Brevard College here, he used to say, "It's great to be alive in Transylvania County." And it is. You know, there's only a few ways you need to make a difference in the world. They're going to remember who you are, what your message is, or something you said. This county is so participatory that I felt community differently than I had ever done before. And I hope you start to feel community. I hope that you get out and participate in your community if you don't already. Participation is the way to change the world. There's 186 hours in a week. This is me at the soup kitchen at Thanksgiving, turkeys. I'm the middle one in the middle. That takes time. It takes people. It takes lots of people to turn these things out. Here is all of us at the soup kitchen one Thanksgiving. Here's another one of us, all together. All giving 2 or 3 hours a week or 2 to 3 hours a month. I tried to find a way to make money, and we had to come up with creative ways. One of the creative ways we came up with to make money at the soup kitchen is that a high school girl did a senior project called Empty Bowls. And she got a couple of potters in our community to make these bowls for us, and she filled them up with soup and sold them to raise money. The idea is that if you see those bowls in your cabinet, you pull them out and you're reminded that there are people with empty bowls in your community. That lady raised a couple $100, and then she went off to college, and I never saw her again. But we've done that every year since, and it's the largest fundraiser for the Bread of Life Soup Kitchen right now. It brings in thousands of dollars a year and lots of attention. It takes people doing that. Another way we raise money, I have an 8.5-foot white squirrel costume. This is me breaking the world record for the most people dressed as a white squirrel dancing for 5 minutes. We set the record 1 year, and 2 years later, we had to break our own record. But this is participation. This is the mayor right here on the side with his daughter and everybody coming down the hill with whiskers, tail, and ears. It's all it took to participate. That was free. All it took is 2 cans of food to enter. Think of all those people in that line dancing, all those people watching, all those people participating. My name is Michael Collins. There's 168 hours in a week. You do have time. Thank you for your time today. Thank you.